Hey! Hi, thanks for being here. It's been so long. um, this is my channel, Serial Redesign by Randy K. Wilson. I am Randy K. Wilson. And if this is your first time tuning in to my channel, this is where I paint furniture, or sometimes attempt to paint furniture, and I tell you stories about true crime. So, murder and painting. Um, if this is not your first time here, which is unusual because this is really only my second video, then welcome back. What brought you back? I'm just curious. Tell me in the comments, because is it the murder? Is it the sometimes failed attempt at painting? Or is it, this awkwardly weird woman who enjoys doing both things at the same time? Not murdering, telling stories about murder, of course. I don't know, but I do know that my roommate's going to be back any second and my dog is going to freak out, so let's just be ready for that. Okay, so yeah, if you're here, please like and subscribe to this channel, Serial Redesign by Randy K. Wilson. You can also find me on Facebook and follow me there. And if you are interested in maybe me giving any of your furniture a facelift, send me a message. That'd be great. Yeah. So let's just get started. Today, I am attempting my first paint pour. Okay. And let me just say, attempt is a crude word. I am not 100% satisfied with this piece, but that's okay because it's my own personal piece. I'm going to keep it and probably someday redo it. And while you are watching me paint, you also get to listen to me tell you the story of the kidnapping and murder of Madalyn Murray O'Hare. Now, this was a suggestion by a dear friend of mine, Bill. I'm not going to say his last name, not sure if he'd appreciate that, but Bill and I became friends over the summer whenever we were both taking classes to be auctioneers, because why not? Of course I've done that. Yeah, the configuration is I've got my screen kind of down here, and I've got my notes kind of over here, so I'll be going back and forth, so don't let that freak you out. Okay, and you know what? I'm gonna press play, and we're gonna start. Okay, now as you can see, small side table, end table, white. It's kind of old, kind of rickety. It's got also like kind of that French design on the top. Obviously, you know where our design choices have been in the past. Yeah, these are the products that I use. I use Dixie Belle products. They are my favorite. No hate on any other products. That's just what I prefer to use. I love all of the Dixie Belle stuff. So yeah, I ended up not using the buttercream. Got that in the notes. And those are the colors that I will actually be pouring onto the surface of the end table. Cool. Yeah. So let's get over to the murder, why don't we, of Madalyn Murray O'Hare. She was an activist. I am going to give you a little background story on her at first because she was a very interesting woman, to say the least. Madalyn Murray O'Hare, her last name was Mays when she was born in 1919. She was born in Pennsylvania. Her family moved to Ohio, and that's where she lived and grew up, and eventually married a steel worker in 1941. Yeah. There's me painting the piece. Not painting yet, cleaning. I've got to clean it with White Lightning. You always have to clean your pieces really, really well. I prefer White Lightning, Dixie Belle product, of course. Get you 2 buckets, get one with your white lightning product in it and one with just warm water so that you can not get your Dixie Belle white lightning all nasty and gunky and you have something over here to like wring all the nastiness out of your cloth that you're using to wipe off your piece. Yeah, and then you have to go back with warm water and make sure you get all of the cleaning solution off of it. Okay, murder. Married to steelworker, 1941. However, the couple separated because both of them decided to enlist for service in World War II. Cool, both of them did. And so while Madalyn was posted in Italy as a cryptographer, which I think is freaking cool. She was like writing and breaking codes and stuff so that they can send messages or like trying to get messages from the bad guys. And okay, I don't know what I'm talking about, but it sounds cool. She falls in love with an officer, William J. Murray Jr. Okay, now the problem is, even though she's separated from her husband, they're not divorced. And William J. Murray Jr. is also married. And he's Roman Catholic. And he's not about to divorce his wife. So Madalyn's kind of like, well, you know what? I'm still going to divorce my husband. Haven't seen him in a while. And I'm going to take on your last name. So she changes her last name to Murray. And that's how it stays for a while. Eventually, however, she becomes pregnant, and I guess with all the drama, she ends up moving back home and decides to have the child, and she names the child William J. Murray Jr. III, okay? Also known as Bill, after the father, who I assume she loved dearly. You know, just things happen. Life is life. It's hard, guys. It's hard. Anyway, while she's back in Ohio, she earns a law degree, but she doesn't pass her bar exam. I think that happens quite often too. Madalyn ends up getting pregnant again by a boyfriend. And this boyfriend just kind of pieces out after the child is born. She names her son John Garth Murray, keeping with that last name, Murray. And Garth, I don't think, ever actually met his father. But, you know, so is life. In 1960, Madalyn and her 2 sons move in with her mother and brother, who are now living in Baltimore. And it was at this time that she filed a very well-known lawsuit against the Baltimore public school system, because she was not okay with the fact that they forced her son to pray and read from the Bible every day. She said it was unconstitutional. And that lawsuit ended up going all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court agreed, along with several other lawsuits by other people, that it is in fact unconstitutional to force children in public school to pray and read from the Bible. Okay? So this lawsuit gained her a lot of attention. All right, I apparently stopped cleaning and I have taped the edges of my side table, and now you get to see how the paint pouring works. I take all those colors that I wanted to pour on the top, so I have like a pink and a white and a bluish black and a gold. And the reason I came up with this idea and this mixture of colors is because in the office space that I'm actually in right now, we have a rug that has some of those colors in it, and I thought that they would look really nice together, kind of like keep with the same aesthetic, sort of. That's how it worked in my mind. Like I said, first time paint pouring, and you're about to see how that turns out. Okay, whenever you are going to do your paint pouring, you have to mix the paint with some water. I've seen it done 2 different ways. One way was mix the paint with water, and another way was to pour the paint on and then spray water onto it. I went with the mix it with water part, and I think that possibly that might have been my mistake. I think I might have mixed a little too much water and it got too thin. you know, so you'll see. Yeah, so this great big lawsuit, the Supreme Court decided it was unconstitutional to pray and read from the Bible in public school, which public school, of course, everyone, like, you may not have a religion at all, like the Murrays, or any religion under the sun, you know? So because of the hostility related to this case, Madalyn Murray moved her children to Honolulu, Hawaii in 1963. Okay, and it's there. This is just a little key element I want to throw in, that her son oldest son, Bill, gets his girlfriend pregnant. And Madalyn eventually, she raises that child. The child's name is Robin. And eventually she adopts Robin. Okay, so she's grandma and mom. But she's got a very interesting life, and I kind of love it. Anyway, it was in 1965, Murray remarried a U.S. Marine, Richard O'Hare. Not remarried, but she married this is her second marriage. And she changed her surname. So now she is Madalyn Murray O'Hare, as we know her by. The couple did eventually separate, but she stayed married to him until his death in 1978. Cool. There's me pouring away. Got the pinks on, got the whites on. Yeah, now I'm going with the dark. It's like almost black, but it's got a little bit of blue in it. It's called Midnight Sky. It's very pretty. Love it. Love it. Okay, and I'm gonna throw some gold on there too. So everything was going great with Madalyn. She ends up starting a foundation called the American Atheists in Austin, Texas, which is strange, I would think, but you know, Austin's pretty quirky out there. The aim of the organization was to defend the civil rights of non-believers, work for the separation of church and state, and address issues of First Amendment public policy. All right. So Madalyn didn't just want prayer out of the schools. She also wanted, like, In God We Trust off of our currency. She wanted Under God taken out of our Pledge of Allegiance. So for a lot of people, they were rocking and rolling with it. They were great with it. They were throwing her a lot of money. She would receive tons of donations. But of course, on the reverse side, the other side of that coin, there were a ton of people who were really pissed off. Okay? It was said that at one point, Madalyn Murray O'Hare controlled up to $15 million in donations. Whoa, this is where it gets kind of funky with the paint pouring. I blow dried all those, not dried, but used my hair dryer actually to kind of move all those colors around and create this really cool, like, pouring technique that I've watched, and you can overwork it, and I think that's what I did, because I ended up losing all of that gold, and I was like, no, I love the gold. So then I tried putting more gold on, and it just didn't work. Okay. The final product isn't as bad as I'm making it sound. It's actually pretty nice, but it didn't come out like I wanted it to. I was kind of freaking out at first, and I was like, how can I use this for a video? But I mean, I'm new to this, and you need to know that I'm learning. I am not a pro by any means. I'm an aspiring furniture artist. So yeah, that's what happens sometimes. We live and we learn. Okay, so the American Atheists were rocking and rolling, lots of money, trying to, like, get all of these different things passed, trying to, like, you know, separate God and state, right? Or church and state, whatever that is. Yeah. And this was great up until August of 1995, when Madalyn and her son Garth and her daughter, Robin, granddaughter, adopted daughter, went missing along with $600,000 of American Atheist money. Okay? Now, what do you think happened to them? Honestly, nobody was very alarmed. At this time, Garth had taken charge of the American Atheists because Madalyn had retired, and people working there had found a typewritten note that was attached to the locked office door saying, "The Murray O'Hare family has been called out of town on an emergency basis. We do not know how long we will be gone at the time of writing this memo." And so no red flags were really raised. And I'm sure that nobody really knew that the money was gone yet. And then also for the next 3 weeks, the American Atheists, the employees there, continued to get phone calls from Garth. And he was basically business as usual, keep it running. Everything's great. Everything's fine. And so no one was freaking out. But then eventually the phone calls did stop. But still, people were just kind of under the impression that they took a bunch of money and just retired somewhere, And the American Atheists, they had plenty of money and they were just going with the flow, Kind of like this piece with me and painting. Just go with the flow. And here I am painting the base part of the table with that midnight sky because... I think that the dark and I'm not even going to try to sound like an artist right now. It's early, guys. I need more coffee. So no one was alarmed. No one raised any red flags. And that was until almost an entire year had passed. So in August of 1996, John McCormick started writing a news article about the anniversary of the American Atheists. He was a journalist. And McCormick worked for the San Antonio Express News. And honestly, the first article that he published about this, he didn't have any answers to anything, to the disappearance or the money or anything like that. I'm not even sure if he was aware that there was money gone at the time. He wrote that they disappeared. No one knew anything. There was a quirky transaction involving a car shortly before they disappeared. And that was all he wrote. But 3 months later, after publishing this article, John McCormick received some friendly advice from a tipster to look into the tax records for the American Atheists. And when he did that, he realized that there was something pretty fishy going on whenever that $600,000 disappeared. Because it happened at the same time that Madalyn and her family disappeared. So McCormick hired some private investigators because he's a great journalist, apparently, and willing to go above and beyond. Hired some private investigators, and over the next couple of years, he continued to dig into this case because he wanted answers. He wanted to know where they went, why no one could contact them, and what happened, of course. I'm putting a second coat on right now. In June of 1998, McCormick receives a phone call from another tipster that the disappearance was actually a kidnapping, and after further investigation, McCormick discovered the connection was to a man named David Waters, who worked for the American Atheists in 1993 and was convicted of stealing $53,000 from the organization. The person who gave McCormick the tip was actually really worried about this man named Danny Fry, who supposedly helped David Waters with the kidnapping, but afterwards went missing himself. Okay, so that one little tip led McCormick to the connection between David Waters and the disappearance and murder of Madalyn Murray O'Hare and her son Garth and her granddaughter Robin Murray, as well as the murder, come to find out, of Danny Fry. You see, what happened was, pause, over here, this table. So the reason I had put all the tape around the edges was because I wasn't really sure how all of the dripping on the sides was going to work. It might have been a step I could have skipped, but I really didn't want to have to go back over it with sandpaper and then mess up the top. So I was just like, wanted to be as careful as possible. So now I am painting those edges, being very careful not to get paint on the top where I poured all the paint. All right. This was like over 2 different days. Of course, I let that paint on the top dry for quite some time. Sorry, Titus doesn't get a cameo in this video, if that's why you're here, to see my dog. What he finds out, so what McCormick finds out is that David Waters actually loathed and hated Madalyn Murray O'Hair, and he organized this whole kidnapping with David Fry and Gary Carr. The 3 of them grabbed the Warren O'Hair family and took them to a rental property in San Antonio, okay, from Austin to San Antonio, in a rental property where they held them hostage for an entire month, okay? Crazy. In that month, the Madalyn O'Hair and her family, they apparently had many philosophical conversations with their kidnappers and would play board games and card games. And Garth, even on a regular basis, would go to a local Mexican restaurant and order food to bring back and stay with his captor and like drink margaritas and beers until they were ready to come home. So like, I don't know, maybe that's how you fall in love with a captor, is lots of margaritas. I don't know. In September of 1995, Murray had $600,000 wired to the US from New Zealand because they were keeping their cash in New Zealand for the American atheists, apparently, which was then used to buy gold coins. Cool. On September 29th, Murray picked up $500,000 worth of coins from that jeweler that was, you know, doing that transaction of cash to coins. But he left behind $100,000. Not really sure. I don't know why. But it did become very helpful to investigators that he left behind that money. That same day, the O'Hairs were moved to a La Quinta in Culebra Road. I did good on La Quinta, but I didn't do so great with that next name. Anyway, moved them to a hotel room, okay? And then one by one, they strangled each of the O'Hair family members. So Madalyn, Robin, and Garth were killed that night. After they were killed, the bodies were rolled up in a bedspread, and the captors swept the hotel room because apparently Madalyn knew that, oh my God, it's going down tonight. We may not survive this. So she started writing notes and like leaving them all over the hotel room, hopefully for like someone to find it so they would know that something terrible had happened. But they swept the hotel room and found everything. And then the bodies were stuffed into a van and taken to Austin. So we already went from Austin to San Antonio back to Austin, okay? Waters later told the FBI, because he was found and the FBI got all of this from him. He made a deal, actually. He told them, like, look, I'll tell you what's going on, but I only want to spend 20 years in prison. And they were like, okay. Told the FBI that when in Austin, they chopped up the bodies and loaded the pieces into 3 55-gallon metal drums. Okay? It's terrible. And then they drove the haul to Camp Wood in Real County, northwest of San Antonio, where they were buried. Again, Austin, San Antonio, Austin, back to San Antonio to be buried. Weird. Before disposing of the bodies, the 2 captors turned on the other. That's the Fry guy. They shot him and then also dismembered him. They cut off his hands and his head. And so they buried the body without the hands and the head with the Murray O'Hairs. And they took the hands and the head and they... Did I get that right? No. Opposite. They put his head and his hands with the Murray O'Hares, buried that. They took the headless, handless body and they left it along the Trinity River in Dallas. I guess they feel like if they spread out and do all these things in different places, that the evidence is so spread out that like no one can catch them. Which, I mean, I guess it kind of worked. I mean, if McCormick hadn't gotten involved, they may have never been found out. Here I am painting the edges still. I don't know, that's a lot. I did a lot of recording. I didn't know how long this was gonna take. Waters would eventually lead the authorities to the exact spot where he and Carr buried the O'Hare's remains and Fry's head and hands. Waters would be sentenced to 20 years in prison because that's the deal he made. And he ended up dying there in 2003 because of lung cancer. Carr, the other guy, who was just kind of like okay, I'll come along and do this with you if I get some gold coins. He had a really bad rap sheet, and he refused to help any of the investigators out. So he actually was sentenced to 2 life sentences in prison. So lot. I don't know if he's still alive or not. Not aware. I could have looked it up, but I didn't. Okay, all right, at this point here, I thought that I was going to be very delicate and paint gold rings around the leg-ish part of the table. And it ended up not going well because I am not a delicate painter. I am more of a like slap it on, have fun, it goes wherever it goes kind of painter. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't working. And I went to wipe it off, but the gold paint like stayed in the crevices, kind of like the gilding wax does for Dixie Belle products, if you know what gilding wax is. And I was like, hey, I could do this a couple times and it would look like the gilding wax. And it did kind of turn out like that, and I enjoyed it. So I kept it that way. I like how it kind of gives that blue-black color underneath a gold shimmer on top. Very pretty, like it. Did that also around the edges of the table as well. And then of course, to set all of the paint, you have to wax it. So I'm using my spray on wax. I also took I have a container of just clear wax that you can brush on as well. And I did that really well on the top. And I kind of buffed it a little bit afterwards to make it a little shinier. Yeah, but overall, I enjoy how it turned out. I'm not in love with it. Wouldn't sell it, but it's good for my office. So yeah, I like it. And that is the story and the kidnapping of Madalyn Murray O'Hare and her son Garth and her granddaughter Robin O'Hare. All right, and here's my before. And there's the after. It doesn't look, it's still pretty, you know? I like it. It's not spot on. I'm gonna have to practice some more, but I do like it. It's nice. Okay. So I just want to recognize for a moment that John McCormick is a badass. Okay? Can I say that on YouTube? I don't know. Just journalist, and he was after his story and he went for it, and it blows my mind whenever it takes journalists years to come up with one story to get all of the pieces that fit together. That's intense. I can't stay focused on something that long, but it takes a very, very dedicated person to be a really good journalist. So great job, John McCormick. He ended up getting 2 murderers captured and sent to prison. That's amazing. Yeah, so that is the story of Madalyn Murray O'Hare and her son Garth and her granddaughter Robin and Danny Fry, who just kind of like, that shouldn't have happened. He did a terrible thing, but like, his buddies turned on him. What the heck? Yeah, and that is me attempting a paint pour. So if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe below. And like I said, if you would like to contact me and let me give your furniture a facelift, I promise I won't do paint pouring on your furniture. We'll talk about it. We'll make it however you want it. And it will be done well, I promise. So contact me on Facebook at Serial Redesign by Randy K. Wilson and go like that page as well. And this is something that is very important to me as well. If I sell any of the pieces that I make on this channel, I will be donating 20% of the profits that I make to End the Backlog. It is, I guess, my favorite charity organization. So info for that is also here on my YouTube channel. You can go check that out in the About section. And thank you again for watching. I hope to get more content out. I hope to get it out hopefully once a week. I don't know if that's possible. I thought Thursdays sounded like a great day, but you know, I've got a day job and things didn't work out the way I intended for them to. So now maybe it's Sundays. Sundays might be the golden ticket. So yeah, hopefully see you next week and have a great one. Bye guys.